you very much. Thank you to our panelists for being here. In the course of history, is there an ebb and flow of religious persecution? It increases at points in time, decreases at others. And what would be the cause and effect, the factors that change the nature of the amount and intensity of religious persecution around the globe?
Thank you,
Please.
Senator. Well, I think an example, and the Secretary of State brought this up in testimony just a few days back, where he said if you look at the violence that has occurred through the last century, that it's safer now than it was in the last century. But the last century was the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews and 6 million others were killed. The ebb and flow tends to be with a rise of nationalism, with a disregard of anyone being different, or anyone being different being deemed the enemy. And it starts in the education process. I know this is something that Ambassador Saperstein's been concerned with. If you teach hatred, you breed hatred. And I think this also goes back to what Senator Graham said. We have to understand that nation building here, I mean, that's not a popular word, but we have to engage it. And with regard to this kind of the ebb and flow, I think we're at a point in history right now that if we look at what is taking place just within the Middle East, I'm not even going to include most of North Africa, just the Middle East, there is a 9/11 every single day. Every single day. And some days much worse. Just the sheer numbers of people being killed because of who they are. That includes the Baha'is, that includes the Yazidis, that includes Christians, and of course with some other groups it includes Jews. And I think we're in a point in history where they may not have the lethality yet in the sense of the systematic approach of the Nazis. They are certainly marking people because of what they believe in for extermination, and that does not bode well for the people.
Is it that you believe something different than those in power?
Well, certainly. And I think the Islamic State's a perfect example of this. ISIS, now called ISIL, now just called the Islamic State, has a view that if you are a Muslim that disagrees with them, you are an infidel. In fact, in one sense, they're worse than other religious groups. So that's why you're seeing this kind of mass destruction within the Muslim community. I was talking with a friend of mine, Canon Andrew White, who's the vicar of Baghdad for the Anglican Church in England. He's now in Jordan. And he said that if you look at the indiscriminate nature of ISIS, they have a very narrow view of their version of Sunni Islam. But you now have this pledging of allegiance by these other groups. We don't want to call it, no one likes to say you're in a war, in a religion war, but we are, Senator, as you said. No one wants to say we're in war with Islam. Well, tell that to Caliph Ibrahim. It may not be the Islam that most of the people support, granted, but it is this version. And this version is as toxic as the Nazis. And I lost a lot of family members in Nazi Germany, so I don't say that lightly. A whole side of my family was wiped out in Nazi Germany. But it's that same kind of systematic approach.
Well, I actually think my choice of words, ebb and flow, is unfortunate in a sense. It's not that casual.
Yeah.
Don't mean to downplay that it's just some force beyond our control. But that answer to that question, I think, helps determine what the response is to fight religious persecution.
And one of the things, Senator Graham, you had mentioned, I think this exactly applies, Senator, is under the International Religious Freedom Act right now, it's non-state actors aren't covered. But if we include non-state actors within that, and I think we have to, ISIS is operating like a state, first of all. If you include non-state actors, all of a sudden we can freeze assets, we can deny access, we can deny entry, we can move on visas, we can move on passports. And I think when you got U.S. recruits, we need to put non-actors inside the International Religious Freedom Act. That needs to be an amendment authorized by the Congress.
Thank you very much. Ambassador, as we know, we have ongoing negotiations with Iran currently related to nuclear weapons. Is there a conversation, a discussion, negotiations going on directly with Iran related to religious persecution? And if you could bring me up to date on Pastor Saeed and the latest efforts by our efforts to see his release.
Allow me 20 seconds to just add to what Jay Sekulow said. In our IRF reports on 199 countries. Every one of them has a section about social hostilities. Every one of them has a section on non-state actors when they're there. So we are fully reporting and engaging on it. And what we test in that is, does the government respond to it? Its failure to respond. It isn't just complicity. It isn't just what they're acting. They're complicit if they let it happen and they don't act. So there is at least some engagement on those issues. Yes, we look. There are limits when we don't have diplomatic relations with a country, but around the sidelines, I think this is well known. Around the sidelines of the nuclear talks, Wendy Sherman has engaged over Saeed Abedini. There have been extensive conversations. We have used the Swiss and other international partners who have better relations to deal with American prisoners of all kinds, religious and non-religious, but that includes the religious prisoners of conscience who are American citizens and some who are not on these issues as well. But there are limitations. But on Saeed Abedini, that has gone on. We do know, and I want to commend the ACLJ on their extraordinary work for the Abedini family, but I have learned from them that his father is now allowed to visit him again. That is encouraging, but nothing is going to be satisfactory to the family or America until he is released.
Let me raise one other country, and that's China. And Bishop, let me address this to you. I think Pope Benedict and now Pope Francis has made efforts at outreach to China to reestablish a relationship. Is there any tangible progress that's being made in the protection of Christians and others in China as a result of the Pope's efforts?
Well, I haven't seen anything or monitored that as far as progress, but we're allowing the Vatican to take the lead on that, so we don't want to disrupt that process, and it's certainly one of dialogue and building some trust. But obviously there are tremendous challenges in the situation there with the underground church and the official church. But we want to encourage, we don't want to do anything that would disrupt or harm that dialogue that the Vatican has reached out to.
Well, I appreciate that you're halfway around the globe, but I do appreciate the Vatican's efforts, China and elsewhere. They've been an ally of the efforts to reduce religious persecution and promote religious freedom, and I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes, sir. Senator